So this session was my idea. I'm Ken Novak from Chicago. We started the day hearing about the philosophical, anthropological foundations of the work we continue to do. Learned about the struggles of others and how we might support them in changing times, and doing some ends around our own defenses, to use probably the only sports analogy you'll hear this weekend. I was only a fly on the wall. As Louise, our new and, in my informed opinion, a brilliant and capable 21st century leader, professional leader, and Julia Julstrom-Agoyo, two of my ethical heroes, put this together. We can't serve if we don't last. And in order for us to last, we have to help the people who will be providing the shelters from the storms that are coming in the next few decades. We can't do that. I can't do that. My generation can't do that. We're going to be helped by those people. And we're not building anything. In the next year, what we build between now and meeting again, it's not for me. I mean, despite my obvious generalized stage fright, I'm as gruntled personally as a human can be. We don't need to take care of me. We need to find ways to help more people in the turbulent times to come. And I want to hear about young people, because the lesson I learned from the 60s was, don't rely on older people to know everything. The younger people are seeing things that older people are just blind or too filtered to see, missing or misinterpreting. So I want to hear what I'm missing, misinterpreting, how I can help and give advice-free help in the future. Louise?
Okay. I don't know, do I have to unmute my mic? Hi, I'm Louise Jett. I'm really loud. I was in a band in college and they called me Don't Need a Mic Louise, but I probably need a mic. Okay, I got it. Okay, welcome everyone. Again, my name's Louise Jett and I'm a newly certified ethical culture leader. I'd like to start out with some community norms. Please be fully present. Please speak from the I perspective. Be self-responsible and challenge yourself. Listen, listen, listen. I really want us to take the opportunity to listen to these panelists, so listen before jumping in. Lean into discomfort, take some risks, be raggedy, be ready to make mistakes, don't judge other. Treat the candidness of others as a gift. We're gonna honor the confidentiality of the space, even though it's broadcast, but as much as we can. And no shame, no blame, no guilt. So I just wanted to set some community norms. And thank you to Ken for this opportunity. This was Ken's idea. He really wanted to hear from young people within our movement, and I really admire and commend him for that. So we have a great panelist today, great panel of awesome people, and I would just like them to start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Maybe if you have a history with ethical culture or the AEU, you could tell us about that. So let's start down here and pass the mic.
Emily, still on? Okay. Emily Newman, she, her. I grew up at the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture. Literally started the children's program when I was 2 because my brother was doing it when he was 4, and I get to do everything he gets to do, in my opinion. I didn't technically leave Brooklyn, but when I came back after college, that happened to be the year that Brooklyn was hosting the FES conference, so got roped into that and stayed with FES. Technically, again, not out of FES, because even though I'm old now, but then I worked for the American Ethical Union for about 10 years, and sort of was a member of the Silicon Valley group when I was there, and now a member of Washington Ethical Society because I'm there.
And thank you, I forgot to include my pronouns. They are she and her.
Hi everyone, Julia again, she, her. As I've mentioned, I grew up going to the Chicago Ethical Humanist Society since I was around 6. My parents brought my brother and I there at the same time. He's a couple years older. For my parents, they were looking for a place to raise children with a non-theistic background and have that community aspect as well. So I grew up going to the Sunday school, was involved with YES, the youth group, high school students, and that's where I also connected with youth group, or YES people all over. And then I stayed active with FES after high school as well. And that's where I met Emily and Christian. I have since been kind of off and on involved with the AEU. I moved to New York 5 years ago, so kind of got roped into being the FES representative to the board and have stayed on. And in the past, we have all kind of, Emily, Christian, and I have helped organize the FES conferences that were happening every Memorial Day weekend until the pandemic, and we have kind of petered out for the moment.
Thank you.
My name is Christian Hayden. I am, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I am a leader, and as well, I'm a member of Philadelphia Ethical Society, and also a member of Future of Ethical Societies, even if it's petered out a little bit. My history with ethical culture, I think, goes back more than 10 years, probably 12 years. A mentor that I had in Philadelphia sort of was giving a talk for a Sunday platform at the Ethical Society in Philadelphia, and I came and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I stayed and hung along and came to St. Louis and met Julia and Emily, and then kept coming back. And so it's interesting to still be here, even as to be on a panel for youth as I'm graying and having all sorts of pains and aches associated with the process of aging. But yeah, I just want to share whatever little insight I may.
It's funny because all the panelists are like, wait, I'm not young, except for like Julia.
Hi everyone, I'm Rhiannon Johnson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a little bit of a counterpoint. I did not grow up into this society, in this culture. I joined separately, independently, moved to New York about 6 years ago and was looking for a community to build and, volunteer with my community. And so we found the Westchester Society at that point and joined, and now I have a son who's 15 months, and so interested in raising my son in something of, how do you instill morals and teach ethics? It's such a hard thing to just sometimes even describe, so how am I going to teach that to him? So I'm interested in kind of continuing that on, and so I've been on the board for the AEU for the last year, and have just been voted on for the Westchester board as well as of last month, and that's been my involvement so far.
Thank you.
I'm Joseph Farkas, pronouns he, him, his. My involvement with the AEU and the AHA really begins about a year or so into my graduate chaplaincy degree, where I became aware of the push for humanist chaplaincy in the US military, and was recruited into that push by the military atheists and freethinkers, who were something of watchdogs for equity and treatment of atheists, humanists, atheists, agnostics, nuns, and no preferences that serve in our armed forces. And that's the way I came by here. And I continue to love and serve the community as a humanist chaplain in two of our largest hospital networks in Chicago, Northwestern and Endeavor Health.
Okay. Now you can kind of keep that and we can pass it around, whoever wants to go next. But I would like to ask about, why are you here in the most loving way? Why are you a member of our movement? What keeps you involved with ethical culture? Anybody? Who wants to go first?
Put me on the spot. That's the working title of a presentation I have for EHS coming up, which is, what are you doing here? Because it's a question that has followed me throughout my professional chaplaincy career in positive and negative lights. I think in the most positive lights have been the faces of patients who never expected, in the midst of their psychological crisis or their cancer fight, to find across the hospital bed or across the table in the psych ward a humanist chaplain who was not going to witness to them or share their testimony or to evangelize to them while they were fighting for their life, fighting for their psyche. And the dawning realization on their face that there is someone here sincerely for them where they're at. And that has always made it incredibly apparent to me what I'm doing here and who I'm doing it for. It's come in poor lights where I've been lectured by seniors in both my military and professional career that why aren't you a social worker? You know, why chaplaincy? Why obsess yourself with penetrating the field of chaplaincy as a humanist or as an atheist? Why not do literally anything else? Please do something else. Or, you know, are you trying to be a humanist in the military so that you can convert people? Like, no, you know, I'm of the opinion that religion is for serving people, not the other way around. But I've been asked throughout my journey, you know, what are you doing here? And the answer is trying to help.
Thank you.
So my answer to that right now is I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. I'm trying to find that out. Part of it is my son, like I mentioned before, like how do I teach him? How do I have lots of things in my head. How do I teach him all of those things? But then, yeah, just in terms of this movement overall, I'm still like absorbing a lot of information from people, a lot of, you know, how things have been done and where we potentially can go. There's a lot of potential, but are we going to get there? I don't know. So do I see myself in the movement? Maybe, maybe not. I think it's still too early for me to tell. Because I'm still learning, and I think that, you know, just got to be transparent about that. Still learning about everything, and trying to find my place within it.
Thank you.
I think I want to answer the question of why I'm here specifically in Minneapolis first. The pandemic was both a revelatory time. Even as we say that Fest petered out, we did some interesting things of keeping community, keeping contact with each other at points in the pandemic that were really special, and I'm really proud of. And I think it's made us closer, even as like the group has kind of sort of petered out. And then also like with my personal life, I got into documentary making. And it's been something that has given me just something to hold on to look forward to like a reason to travel and explore. And I love that feeling. But I think it also stressed my relationship with ethical culture. Before 2019, we had no idea that was going to be the last time we were going to be in a way too cold hotel in Tampa. Together, and even as a small movement, a small congregation, small federation, I think this was an important moment. And Elle dying in the middle of that, also the separation was also very difficult because Elle, as flawed as I am as a leader, as a humanist, as a member of all these groups that I've been a part of, he really pushed and supported me as like a person that's kind of an other in this movement. And like, you know, I think there was a lot of reason why I'm still here. And I never really talk about that. But I think there was so much lost during the pandemic. My mentor died during the pandemic, part of the reason why I ended up in ethical culture. And it's also, I think there's some dreams died during the pandemic. I think I had this image of what I might be as a leader, what it might look like to do an internship as a leader, and that didn't happen. It was a virtual internship with St. Louis, which was revealing and also a really cool opportunity, but it wasn't quite what I imagined that would look like. And so I think it really strained my relationship with ethical culture. And then understanding that ethical culture is going through its own strain with a relationship with itself, with each other. And I wanted to come here as like, hey, like we're back together, we're starting this again. It's like having fun in laughing and giggling and exploring these ideas. That was what my hope was for coming here. But why I'm a humanist or why I'm an ethical culturist is because it was the first time in my life I feel like I didn't have to translate what I actually believed. You know, I could go to the Quakers and feel like, all right, I get this somehow. I kind of fit here. I go to some churches and be like, oh, I could kind of fit here. But I feel like ethical culture, I didn't have to change anything. It made sense. It's like the relationships can be transformational. You know, and I was like, oh, I saw what this could be, you know, of like, oh, it's this kind of bridging between action and belief, thought, right? We're learning and then we're trying to do, you know. It's like, okay, it'd be cool having kids here and kids from particular neighborhoods that I used to work in, and really trying to build that intergenerational community, right? And I still see that, right? But I also know it's a long, far away, right? Far, far away. So I think, yeah, that's why I'm here, and that's what I kind of try to imagine, you know, as I keep coming back, and I try to feel like we'll, like, you know, build the groundwork, try to do some of the repair, some of the healing, so that, you know, we kind of, like, I use the seed metaphor during All Society's platform, but, you know, like, as a person who's still young, relatively here, but also, you know, trying to think about, well, what am I doing for the future? Like, what seeds am I watering? Who's the person that I'm going to be like L towards, right? Someone who maybe doesn't feel completely belonging here, but is attracted to here and wants to do things and like feel warm and welcomed and belonging. And so that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
I don't know how I could top that, but I'm not a politician. So why am I here in general, like still with the movement? I think since I grew up with it, it's very core to my identity. I feel that being grounded in ethics, like, kind of was just foundational for building my moral compass, forming like who I was as a person. I really enjoyed going to Sunday school every Sunday to be with other, I know we've talked about the term like-minded, but other folks or other kids that also maybe didn't believe in God and maybe felt a little bit ostracized or othered at school for that, and didn't have to explain myself like Christian mentioned. And so I really appreciate the community that I got from ethical culture. I love the people. I felt very committed and still feel very committed to the people and the movement and the values. Like my father, we both share like a very strong sense of obligation as well, which can be kind of, for a long time I was saying yes to too many things, and got burnt out, not just in this movement, but in other spaces. So I started to say no and be a little less involved. But I still really appreciated the community aspect, and having Fez every year, I really looked forward to just being in a space with people that were grounded in being a good human, and talking about things that I thought mattered, and how to improve the world and being kind to each other, which is not always the spaces that we are in. Especially as I spend most of my days in Manhattan. I tell everyone I'm Manhattaned out because it really kind of sucks your soul out sometimes. Maybe that's just me, but. And then why I'm here today specifically, I, as mentioned, am the Fez rep and haven't been too active. I was more active in the last year when I had a lot of free time after grad school before working. And at that time also, Anya was on the board, and Anya kind of invited me to co-chair this assembly with her. I said yes. I also said if I got a job, I don't know how much I can commit. But that's why I'm here today. And in addition, I was really looking forward to being in person with this community again. I really value being in person with people. It's just not the same being virtual, and especially as Fez hasn't been meeting regularly in the last couple of years, I was really excited to see a lot of familiar faces, not just from Fez, but from other societies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to answer?
No, I'm the facilitator.
So I echo what Julia was saying in terms of I'm still in the movement because that's who I am. I am like born, raised humanist. It makes sense to me. I want to keep doing it. I needed to rejoin an ethical society when I was working for the American Ethical Union for my own sanity. It was not a requirement of the job, but I just felt like I needed the replenishing of why the work was important, and like get the benefits of this product, this service that I am promoting and publicizing into the world in order to keep me going, and which is why I have connected with the society wherever I've lived, I love with the well, of course we want people to be more active, or like do the things, show up to the things. I love that there is an actual strict attendance. So like if I don't have a role to play on Sunday morning, and I decide to sleep in or go to brunch or whatever else I do with my time, I don't feel judged, or people don't, guilt trip me when I see them later. They very much appreciate when I am there and all that I do in the space. And so I just find it very refreshing. Sometimes I zone out during Sunday platform and couldn't tell you what I absorbed, but I definitely feel a renewing spirit going into the week. And similar with the Zooms that Fest did together, sometimes when I hear about things happening at other societies, I will say I'm here at this event mostly because my session got approved and I knew I'd be seeing some people. I've been to this city before. It wasn't like so I agreed to be a delegate for West. So it wasn't a burden to me. I have a love-hate relationship with conferences, so I do totally understand how it's not as attractive to other folks. But I think one of the things I heard that I agree with is that hope, the potential, and especially as a child of ethical culture, I love being part of the children's program, not only because they're cute and funny, but because I do feel like that is me ensuring the future of society.
Thank you. My next question is, what can we do to make the movement more attractive for young people, in your opinion? And we don't have to go in a row back and forth if someone wants to tackle the question first, or...
Well, you percolate, since I have the mic. I'll start. So many thoughts, but I definitely feel like we need to amp up our publicity, and I always say I don't like the term proselytizing. It scares people away, but publicity, promotion, definitely, both on multiple levels. The being able to talk about it. I did workshops in the past about your elevator pitch, of confidently sharing what you love about your society. I have presentations on tabling, and always wanted ethical culture to table more. And also fundraising. I know asking for money is always awkward, but I think that we need to be able to share how by being clear about the usefulness of money, it makes people more willing to give and recognize that it's that's a way to invest in your society, the same way as volunteering or taking a leadership position is sustaining the society. I talked to the American Humanist Association groups who are even less happy to give money because that's too churchy, about being very appreciative of, you like coffee at this meeting, it's provided by so-and-so. You like, being in this space, it's because these people have set it up. So recognition, appreciation goes hand in hand with the actual fundraising, and also goes with the promotion aspect. When people see our communities as a source of joy and energy and action, they want to be a part of that. So I think that not to hide the negative things, but like if we could find more ways to uplift the positive and resolve the negative, I think we'll be sexier to the world.
Thank you.
I think about this a lot in different ways. But I think when that question is asked, I do think that it is important to think about what is a society for? Who is a society for? Who is it the way it's designed for? Who are the people that are able to participate in it, contribute to it, to make decisions, right? And it's because it relies so much on people that have time to give, especially time during the week, time during whatever, to work, right? It tends to be older folks, right? Folks who are not working in the same capacity. And people in other parts of life have a lot of competing interests, a lot of competing things for their attention, right? And at the same time, there is a void for community. So there is a need, right? But is it going to be met with the way that the traditional way that ethical society has imagined itself in terms of on a Sunday morning meeting, right? And that'd be the central spiritual tool, right, of ethical culture. And if the goal is to expand who has access and who maybe is making decisions and all that, right? Maybe that's not gonna be, that can't be the central tool. I'm not saying it has to be done away with. I'm just saying on Sunday morning at 11, Sunday morning platform at 11 may not be the way if we want to reach young people. And so I think it's a balancing of being honest about, okay, who is this incarnation of ethical culture designed for? We say, okay, so this is how it manifests for older folks. It works for older folks. You'll consistently find folks who are retired, folks who are looking for community, who move into a city there, or they're double income, no kids. That's my urban studies background, right? They're like, okay, found this place where we can kind of give and be active, right? But then it's okay, well, you have that aspect. Well, what do you build for the openness of who may come in other ways, and that ways that may take a long time to develop and get sustainable. I think in Philadelphia, the building of the society is used in a lot of different ways by the community, because it's centrally located, because it's affordable compared to other spaces to rent downtown or in that part of the city. And so that's an aspect, but it also doesn't necessarily translate into people coming in on Sunday morning. So it's what is it? And then, sort of some of the groups that James Croft did in St. Louis around growth. Small groups are really key to growth in congregational settings. So you have small groups that build and are forming community, something they can share, get deep with other folks, and then they maybe have reasons to expand out into the larger community and come to the Sunday platform, or congregate with other people. And so I think of Brooklyn, who does a really great job. They have poetry groups. They have what else? They have a lot of things in Brooklyn. And in St. Louis has a bunch of different groups. Sci-Fi Club. Sci-Fi book reading club, it's one of my favorite. They meet on Zoom. Anybody can actually go. But it's they read a book a month and they talk about it. And it's like it's just such an amazing time. But it builds community in these small ways that sort of peter out into the bigger group and sort of butterflies out. So I think it's like finding those mix, right? The mix of experimentation, the mix of like this part of this community, because we're all self-interested, I want to preserve for me, but understanding that if I want this to continue, I want it to look different, it might mean sacrificing some influence or some dictation over how this might look, and figuring out who do you delegate that out to, who do you entrust with the like experimentation, right, and allow them the space to try new things and to see what happens. If that's what you want. If that's what you want. Do you want to do it? I just was assuming.
Yeah, so some things that I've been thinking about in terms of attracting people to the movement is more evaluating our own joy in it. Do we feel that that our needs are being met when we do these things together? Do we feel like we're impacting our communities when we're doing our volunteer activities? And so some of it is like, you build it and they will come type of philosophy of like, if we're like having a great time volunteering and having our book clubs and all that, then I think that will have a natural attraction. I think sometimes like we haven't met our own needs of our own community. And I see that sometimes missing. And so like, it's really great that like Westchester has empowered me to like, oh, well, if you want to do volunteer stuff, like you can go out and do volunteer stuff. So that's what I've been trying to do. So some of it is like, you're going to attract people who think like you if you are exuding, your best self. And so being able to provide that space to be everyone's best self is important. Like, do we provide that safe space for the communities that we're trying to attract and are trying to partner with? I think that's still an open question in some cases. Do all the types of communities feel comfortable entering our doors? I'm not sure that we advertise it in that way. To your point, like, how are we communicating that we are that safe space? And that people can find themselves with us. So just a couple thoughts there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I would reaffirm that fulfilling the needs of the community is a really important part, and as an organization, not to obsess over recruitment, and to continue to lead with our heart and our values, serving our community, looking after our members, and to accept that publicity, not proselytization, is a positive move. And we recognize that what a lot of people have shared today is that many in the community are conflict averse, and while we are coexisting with religious nationalism that opposes directly any presentation of community humanism or community atheism, that publicity and awareness, even as it reaches our community members who are not aware of us, who would happily come to our meetings, who would happily participate in our programs and bring their children to us to help formulate them in their values and morality, that yes, that will bring negative attention, but we have each other here. We are not alone in that conflict. We have a room of people here who have been looking after each other, defending each other, supporting each other through many other conflicts like it. And the community will continue to be here through whatever negative attention we acquire by doing the right thing.
So for me, and I'm going to talk about what would attract me or what attracts me or what has attracted me. And I think that would go for a lot of young folks, but again, not all young folks. Some people are looking for different things. So for me, after college, after I was abroad for a year, came back to Chicago, I became a member as an adult of the Chicago Ethical Society. And what brought me there obviously was my history with the group, but what kept me coming, which I didn't go every Sunday, but I would go some Sundays, and I would go for the platforms, the speakers that most interested me, which tended to be, there was a speaker that talked about, I forgot the name of his organization, but he works with youth in neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago to kind of reroute them away from gang life. I think it was called My Hood, My Block, I think. There was one speaker that talked about migration, things that were in line with my interests, human rights-wise. I would be more inclined to wake up on a Sunday morning and go, and I was at that phase of my life post-college where I was wanting to go for the adult platforms. But I was also at a time in my life where I was working and hanging out with my friends, and sometimes I'd go out on a Saturday night and sleep in on Sunday, and so I wasn't going to go every Sunday. I got to know a few of the younger folks there that were kind of new, and they themselves were getting involved with leadership positions in the society, which was really cool to see. And I saw that most of them were going to, I think they had Friday night game nights. And I don't think I ever made it to one of those just because I happened to have other Friday night plans, but that was something that really spoke to some people, and that was something that I think the people were around 30s, 40s would go for that, whereas other members might go to, there was a book club, there was men's group nights on Wednesdays, there was different things throughout the week other than just the Sunday morning platform. I think also what I was looking for was ethical action, and I was, I was working in Chicago, so around 2017 to 2019, and that was during Trump's first presidency, and I was trying to be an activist, and I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I was thinking of how I could use the ethical society and the space that we have and the resources that we have to make that almost like an activist hub. It didn't come to fruition, but I had a lot of ideas. I was thinking like we should start having like interfaith dinners with other faith-based organizations in Chicago, especially after things like the Muslim ban and the backlash that we were seeing in real time in Chicago communities and all around the US and the world. I was wanting to go to marches as a society and have our banner or whatever. I was wanting to have like just more activity in the ethical action portion, and so I joined the ethical action committee for a bit, but then I moved to New York, and then the pandemic happened. But ethical action, I think for me personally, is something that would and does draw me in and makes places like this more attractive. So I think maybe like just increasing ethical action activity and engagement. And then also thinking about the future, one day if and when I have kids, I also would love to take my kids and through the Sunday school and come to the Ethical Society. So at that point, I would probably be at a point where I come every Sunday, have my kids go to the Sunday school. And so I think it just depends, like, you know, and those are young families as well. And I see that in Chicago as a lot of families come when they have kids and are looking for somewhere to go for their kids. So yeah, I think it just changes in phases of your life. And currently I don't regularly attend any society. I still attend Chicago's when I'm home. When I can, I intend to attend New York and Brooklyn and places that I live and am around. And I don't think I'm close to Bergen. I don't have a car in Jersey.
Okay. Very valuable insights and perspectives. I would like to now ask you, what are your aspirations for ethical culture? And be as imaginative as you like. Who would like to go first?
I left the long-winded one myself to go. I'll keep it like brief. I love the conversation that started off, this morning with this conversation about pragmatism and the way influenced Felix Adler, and then like going into the sort of interconnections of Unitarian Universalism with ethical culture, that was beautiful. And I was like, well, where are we going? Right? Where's the writing that talks about that? And when I asked that, I'm looking at myself. Okay, all right, you don't have to say anything. Jeez. But also, yeah, the writing, the production, the cultural production, and I want to see what things. And I think about that. Like, I think I try to read and watch a lot of African literature, African movies, and figuring out how do people come to humanism from other paths than Western philosophy. So this is something really, really interesting to me. So I'm always thinking about like building a course or a book about looking at African manifestations of humanism, articulations. So that's like, that's sort of a dream aspiration. I think when I went into ethical society, or I imagine like who's the ethical society I would want to be a leader of, and I think about a community that looked like representative of the community it was in. So ethical society, it was like, 20% black, 15% Latino, like all this like looked like the city or place it was in a kind of a holistic way, and also like intergenerational still, and like how do you navigate the questions that Emily were talking about earlier, and also Julia, right? Around like we're gonna have this world where you have so many folks who are trying to get freedom, find dignity, and are gonna need support. How do you build a community that can try to meet that need? How do you build a community that's really interrogating, right? Aligning itself to be aware of what it means to be an ally, right? What it means to be caring. And so that's the aspiration, right? It's just like, okay, it looks like the world or the community, but it also acts and functions like the best. It's itself is aspiring to be the best kind of manifestation of that world or city or that place, right? It's wrestling with those things. It is figuring out ways and problems and new approaches to democracy. So those are the aspirations that I have.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Ditto! Wow, bye.
I'll go, even though I just spoke. I think this ties into what I was just saying, but I would love ethical culture to become or increase and become like an ethical action hub, or just like an activist hub. And I forgot to mention this, but I drew, when I was coming up with these ideas for Chicago that I didn't implement, I drew a lot of inspiration from what James Croft was doing in St. Louis during and post Ferguson. And like having, they have a building, Chicago has a building. Having that space is a lot of times, a space is not, activists need a space, and they don't always have resources to have a space. So I thought opening the doors for that was really amazing and made sense. And then also just, I would love, of course, like we want to get our message out there, we want to be more public, but there's just so much opportunity with everything going on in the world and the US, which could be said at any point in time, I feel like. But for example, this election year, democracy at stake, whatever, which is true. But, there's also a genocide happening that we're funding. So it's not just our democracy at stake. And there's a lot of other things happening. And there's just so much room for opportunity where we can connect with these social issues and be, I don't know if it makes sense to be like a moral compass for society, but I would love to get back to having the AEU, making public statements on things like this. This last year I was in the ethical action team, kind of interim team, and I was really involved until I got a job. But I was really hoping to get back on track to be able to make those statements, and I know some work has to be done before those can be happening again in terms of process. But I really was hoping that the AEU could come out with a statement about the genocide in Gaza. And there's no shortage of things to be making statements about. And so I think like when people are looking for, who and where is a message that I resonate with coming from, when you're seeing you don't agree with what's being pushed out in the media, you don't agree with what's being pushed out by certain politicians or churches, I think people would really appreciate having our voice, and they would be able to connect, and it would be good for our membership, and just, I guess, being more politically active and connecting with social issues, because it has everything to do with being and living ethically.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Okay, here. Oh, bring it down. Oh, I forgot that I'm hooked up to this. Sorry.
I'll try to keep it on the rails. I think that the AEU and humanism as a movement in the United States is really uniquely well positioned to address what, in the profession of spiritual care, we're growing in an awareness of a great spiritual illiteracy in the country, where an awareness of what we know to be true, what we believe to be true, and what we hope to be true are unable to be distinguished. And as an ethical movement that rejects death denial, that rejects magical thinking, that rejects a lot of destructive formations in the practice of religion, we're uniquely situated to receive a population of kids and young adults who also see what those assumptions have kind of wrought, and that it has been a long and concerted effort to whitewash the history of the country away from a country which was founded very much on free thought principles, and that reclaiming that role in forming a country that believes in equality amongst all people and has a moving definition of that is evolving and developing and growing in positive ways over time, and can be accelerated in that positive development by people of values and commitments and involvement, and that we can be leaders in involvement and leading with our values and demonstrating that to the population.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I would add, in addition to my ditto, is that I would like to see ethical culture become the place where all of the nuns, not N-U-N, N-O-N-E, come to find their place. There's been a lot of articles about, the growing population of people who are no longer religious, but then, where are they going? Why are they not being attracted to us? So I think that, we should be that landing space for a lot of them, and I think that that's something that, how do we capture them? How do we make them feel at home? So I would like to see that group no longer really categorized as nuns, but as, humanists or secular or ethical culturists. And so how do we capture that population? Yeah, that would be a good aspiration.
I just want to be clear. I would love disaffected nuns to be a part too. They're people that give their life to service and wanna, they're I wanna, do good with people and power with, not over. And it's yeah, we can. There's space for you too.
We'll take both the nuns.
And I'll say ditto to what Rhiannon just shared.
There you go.
Yeah, I think we need a lot more empathy and caring, honestly. I know a lot of great people who have left either a society or the movement because they were just tired of dealing with toxic personalities, toxic structures. They were not receiving as much as they felt they were given or were taken from them. And and people that I would love to see, but I couldn't make the argument or the push or the reassurance that it was that the improvements had been made, and also I think about the folks that I'm hesitant to invite in. I with my work with the American Humanist Association, I very much am celebrating all that ethical societies do, and somewhat defending our congregational, like religious nature, to people who still have a lot of religious scars and or feel like just discomfort even walking into the doors of anything that resembles a congregation, and before they even give us a chance to open our arms and share. I say also, but the other thing I was thinking is that's very much, I guess, on the individual ethical culture person or the collective as a society. But I think even bigger, I would like for ethical culture to be a stronger partner nationally and internationally, because they're, so with Julia's example about the statements, we're not experts on everything that needs to improve in society. So we're going to need to learn from the researchers, the other nonprofits, the amazing, authors and speakers and whatnot. We've seen our obsession with quotes earlier today. And so I feel like there's being able to work well with others. People are constantly asking the AHA, do you work with this organization? What's your relationship with that organization? What's the difference between this and that? They want us to be together in a movement, especially knowing that as we get divided and othered, we're fighting this for resources. We're fighting for attention. We're fighting for to be seen on the internet with all the information thrown at us through social media. And especially, let's not compete with other groups in our region. If you have a building, hopefully we can share it. If you don't have a building, but you have awesome talent in your membership, hopefully we can share it and cultivate and grow, because there's also ethical societies can be a place for people to learn amazing skills. Bergen, I know, did a job fair when they realized that their community was greatly underemployed. New York, when Audrey used to be at New York, she did an ethical activities fair where we learned about other different service projects that we could take advantage of. When I was in college, realizing that after orientation, nobody knows how to find help. So I made a resource fair where we literally had the offices come out on outside saying what they do for students. So it made it easier to find them. And sometimes we have to get out there and say, hey, we're here and let's do stuff together.
Okay, thank you. So now I would like to open up for some questions and then save a little time for some closing comments. When you do ask your questions, please be considerate of mutual respect and mutual purpose. Does anybody have any questions? I can't move. I have no pockets to put my...
Can we confirm that the mobile microphone works?
You want to try this? Yeah. Let's see. You might want to test it.
Hi, I was talking with Scott earlier on this weekend, and he mentioned that he started something in college, and I was wondering, do you think if we had ethical humanist chapters in the college, on the college campuses, if that would be a way to start?
I feel like you should say.
Well, we do have a great organization called the Secular Student Alliance, And they were actually tabling at the first assembly that I ever went to in Albuquerque. And I work with them, so it would be a really great opportunity for us to collaborate. And I think that speaks again too to like what Emily was saying, what other people were saying, this collaboration, that's how we grow. And not only numbers, but impact as well. So there are opportunities for that. St. Louis does have a Secular Student Alliance locally, and we've shared the building with them. We did joint presentations with them. Our leaders have went to their campus and talked about, debated, is there a God, but in a very friendly, way.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I was constantly asked years ago, why don't you start an ethical culture group on your campus? Not only I found that very judgmental, because not only was there assumption that I had the ability and the capacity to, being told that by adults who should then technically have the capacity to build a society in their region. Sorry, I'm still processing that. But also, when as much as college is a chunk of our experience, each year is a totally different chunk. Each semester is so I'm figuring out not only who I am, but how I fit onto this campus. And so I think it's important that, Secular Student Alliance is happy to give out materials from the other organizations. They're happy to talk about the full spectrum of humanism. We also, one thing AEU could do when it's developing its leadership is strengthen our chaplaincy. I know the Humanist Society also has humanist chaplains that are very active, although because it tends to be volunteer, not paid, it's great when a local society is able to work with a chaplain and support a student group, because it's, and recognize, and even then too, your students are if they have all these other groups doing all these other things. So even if you're gonna teach them about humanism, you still need to partner with those other groups, because you're not gonna be able to fill all the needs that a society and a community does on the campus, especially knowing how you need to feed students, you need to be, accommodate their schedule, you need to address their personal relationship with there's a lot that goes in. Sorry.
Solomon has a question, but because I was a university chaplain for many years, and Rich, when I was the leader of the Long Island Society, I was the first humanist chaplain at Adelphi University. And then I went on to Columbia and to NYU, and Audrey's going to take over now that Nori has left. It is very fraught. I really appreciate the support that the AHA has for chaplains. We didn't get as much support from the AEU, although thanks to the New York Society for including that in my work contract at NYSEC, it included the chaplaincy at NYU and Columbia. There are very, very few of us. And I can tell you that within the university system, the Interfaith Center may be paid staff, but we who are chaplains are volunteers unless our respective denominations pay for it. So there's a lot going on there. But I'm going to pass it over to Solomon.
Yeah, this may be simple to answer, but I was curious as to the specifics of why the Fez has petered out.
I can start. And then Christian can continue. I think there's a couple of reasons, but one being that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the youth groups, Youth of Ethical Societies, at their respective societies are petering out. I know that this is true at Chicago. I don't know if this is true at every society, but I think as teenagers get more and more busy with extracurriculars and really demanding academic schedules, I think they're either tired or just not wanting to come on Sundays for whatever reason. And Fez kind of drew mostly from yes, when they graduated from high school, we would invite them to come to Fez. That's how I got there. I believe that's how Emily got there. And then occasionally we would get new members as young adults. And then the other reason was you need leaders. Christian, Emily, amazing leaders. I was just kind of support in planning the yearly conferences and keeping things alive between the yearly conferences, keeping the communication. We had officers and everything, but there was increasingly no one kind of to hand the baton over to, and in addition, the pandemic. And so our last in-person yearly conference was Memorial Day weekend 2019. 2020 was canceled. We had an online gathering, and we had like a few online gatherings that year, maybe the year after, which was really nice to have that space to connect virtually in such an isolating time. But since we have not started those yearly conferences back up, which was kind of like the glue that held us together.
So I think Julia really hit on most of the points, but I think this is what it kind of happens to Fest, and also I think happens to smaller circles usually. It kind of, when people are sort of trying to form a new community, and you need more than like 2 committed people. Like you need like 5, right? And so, because you need to spread the load, you need a mix of skills, right? And you need to, like, when one person can't, do something, or they need to take a step back, someone else can pick up the slack. But then also, I think when you have people that are split between it's like 5 people that are really committed, it's also you're not having like 2 or 1 person's vision. Right? And I think a person that's really driven and they're doing all the work, they're like, well, like the things I want to do, they're kind of going to go to the forefront because I'm the only one putting stuff out there. But then it becomes like that is their group, right? And so if they stop, or I don't know, people are like less interested in what's happening, I think it kind of falls apart. So I think there's a lesson here in a lot of different ways. But I do think that some of it is like, okay, how do we re-engage with whatever financial commitment that ethical culture has to supporting young group membership activities? Because there was also a staff member at the AEU who, did yes, program organizing yes, and then also gave some support, facilitation to FEST. So sometimes also some money for a conference, and so we would maybe like get fronted money, and then we would like pay it back through so there was certain kind of ways that organizations, like I think post-pandemic, post-changes, post-L's death, right, that needs to like be reimagined. And I do think because a lot of us have gotten older as we've maintained, right, and then figuring out a way to be like, okay, there's this group for young adults in the movement, but then there's this other like way that those young adults are figuring out how to meet the needs of the younger folks coming up, or who might be interested, or either just went to college, or just coming out of college, or coming back into their communities. And like, okay, how do we make a safe landing space for them? And like, so this maybe because it's not that far away that we experience some of the things they might have experienced, and know some of the challenges ahead, so that we like kind of a mentoring, like near peer mentoring kind of thing. I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be set up. But I think that's really hard if there's not the institutional support, and there's just not a critical mass of people who have ideas and who are interested to kind of like do that next step. Oh,
Hey y'all. So first of all, thanks to Ken and Louise for coordinating this panel, and thank you all to the panelists for sharing your experiences. I will definitely be rewatching this session. I want to intersect 2 comments. First, Emily, you named that folks have left due to toxic cultures, and then Christian and Christian, you mentioned your comments about who's able to participate and contribute and make decisions, and now you just talked about institutional support, succession planning, et cetera. So my question is, given that context, if you could issue one mandate to those who have the power, influence, and resources to change our systems and spaces, what would that be?
What a great question.
I think that every person that is part of a welcoming board or have some capacity in being responsible for the introduction of new people into the community, go into successful intergenerational, interracial communities and just sit and watch. Just sit and watch how people interact with each other, how people make people feel welcomed, what they say, what they don't say, right? What music is playing, what all aspects, right? From the moment someone steps in the door, that communicates to them, I could be welcomed here, right? And just look. And everyone just has to do the right things, reflect, see what works, see what kind of things is different than the ethical society. Because I think that's just like, I think we get so focused on like who's coming in, what are they doing? But then kind of like Rhiannon was saying about the exuding the thing that you are about, because that will bring people, right? If we are about relationship, if we are about the transformational potential of relationship, you should see it from the way we interact with each other, from the way we have boards, from the way we make decisions, from the way we handle conflict, right? So that's my mandate decree.
I'm trying to find the words. I think this may sound a little blunt, but I think that, one of two. One, check yourself. And I know that sounds harsh, but I feel like there's, I mentioned in my session about the difference between intent and impact. So I really think that, as Christian said, look up intent and impact, go to a session where they dive into how you can pause, really reflect on your need. I want to, let's say, for example, if I want to compliment Louise, my intent should be about making her happy. Not about getting credit for saying something, not about focusing on something I care about, but something that really uplifts her. So that if I then maybe misstep and I say something that doesn't make her happy, I then need to, so it doesn't have the impact that I was hoping for, I need to then take responsibility and fix that and address that, or find out, if I still don't know what I did, find a way to be accepting of receiving feedback. It is not easy. Trang was part of a program at Wes about giving and receiving feedback, which I was so excited to go to, and I need to reread all the stuff that they went over and figure out how to practice it. The second thing I'd say is check each other, and that's where I don't know whether it's calling in, calling on, addressing things, again, going with that feedback part, hopefully in the moment before it builds, finding the right way to not shun people, but to help basically uplift them, elicit the best in them, because there is, I can of course say, oh, it's that toxic personality that led my friend away, but did I do anything to help that person not be toxic? Not that it's my responsibility, but did I, do they know that they are being toxic? Do I know when I'm turning somebody away? Is there stuff that I can, in the Creating a Caring Culture, I brought up a very personal situation about urgency that happened at work where I got called out for microaggression, and I admit I was like, what now? I did, and it was because I was not familiar with the white supremacy language, and I had to see it from another person's perspective, and I had to break down, oh, so I did this, which made you feel that, and if I had done this, then you would have talked to me about that. And we needed to have a mediation to be clear about it because we were both making assumptions about the other person. And we needed a good facilitator, mediator to help us communicate because we were not in a culture where that naturally happened.
Yeah, and we can't do the work if we're not in these safe spaces, right? So we can't just power through and try to get stuff done, which I think is kind of our tradition. We need to stop before we go back to the task at hand and repair the harm and create the safe space. And it's not easy to do. Okay, I can't stand up.
Well, we're helping you.
Yes.
I'm gonna explode. So when I think about what would I mandate, because I wish I could mandate doing the work. Just do the work. What I would mandate would be that societies perform an inventory of their volunteer capacity. Because if everyone in a community is trying to get support from the community and nobody has the surplus emotional, spiritual, material resources to furnish it, then you have a room full of people trying to drink from an empty cup and screaming for why doesn't somebody come and fill it up? The people who have the energy to fill the cup are gathering where they are all filling the cup and they know that there will be a full cup for them if they need it. They are not looking for communities where everyone is looking to draw but no one is looking to fill. And so finding out how well positioned the community is to serve, and then first working on shoring that up if it's needed, determines a community's ability to have safe spaces, to provide a soft landing for people to examine their internal conflicts, their conflicts with white supremacy, their conflicts with sexism, their conflicts with LGBTQ challenges in the community, and how to receive their rawness. That takes an extraordinary amount of energy to change and to receive people when they're being vulnerable. And if a community is just trying to get by, just trying to meet the numbers and money that it takes to keep the lights on, that's not a lot left over to do radical work.
Yes, thank you. Any other mandates?
Just a small mandate. I would mandate that the representatives of each society are the shining example of the best behavior of our culture. That those people that are being chosen to represent us they really should have the skills and the experience in this movement in how to behave and how to communicate and be the champions of the relationship building and the communication. If our representatives that we choose don't reflect that, it's going to be a challenge. And should we choose others to represent, or do we need to build up those skills in a different way? Because the conversation should really be amongst the elite in our movement. And so I would mandate that we send the elite, we send our Olympians to represent us.
To those marathon board meetings.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, this is a great lead on to my question.
Did you want to say?
And I think some of you did address it, and I apologize because I did exit the room for a little bit if you addressed this. But I think My question is more, maybe if you collaborate more, but I really want to name one thing, which is tokenism, okay? So I think it's good to be inclusive of young people and other folks who are traditionally underrepresented. I just want to make sure that their views and voices are heard in a respectful manner and not just tokenized, right? Because we say, let's get these young people in. Well, then what are you going to do? How do you create a place that not only is welcoming, but that makes it sticky, that makes it, you know, a good place for people to be, you know. I mean, you talked, I think it's great, I heard some interpersonal things like being aware, apologizing if you make a mistake, and so on. I think it's also important to think about institutionally, after we do the volunteer survey, institutionally, what can we do within our society and within the union, right, to make this a place that, you know, that kind of idea of, you know, you're welcoming people to the table. Well, is it because they get the corner of the table, or are you actually setting a place for them, and that there's going to be equal and, you know, respectful conversation? So if you could address that, that would be great.
I'll start. Thank you for that, Trin, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about. I almost giggled when I was thinking about the idea of this panel, because we've had such similar iterations of this panel so many times before, and there is always new things that we discuss, and this is still a great discussion, and I'm glad we're having it. But there's been as long as I can remember, so since I've been a FES member, and I'm 31 now, so I don't know, 12 years, we have been asked the question, what do young people want? How can we retain and increase young members? And what is attracted to young people? And yet we're still having these conversations at least 12 years later. And, you know, without addressing the complete elephant in the room, we had a really, really eager and committed young person that grew up in this movement that was giving a lot of their effort and energy into this movement. And we lost that person. And I think it's a tremendous loss, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. But I think I almost couldn't believe that after so many years of having these conversations and then having someone who exemplified what we apparently wanted, a young person in a leadership position, and also someone not afraid to bring up the very topics we're talking about today, about white supremacy culture and things that we need to address that are not always comfortable. And so I just wanted to name that and acknowledge the tokenizing. And young people, it's not enough to have a young person on a board. I've been on the board as a FES representative for a long time, and I really can't say what I've done as a FES rep on the board. I think for a while it was just enough to have my name in that title, and I take partial responsibility for not being more active and inserting myself, but I think it has to come from both ends, and many would say that I should have been pulled in more, and in that sense, that's all I have to say right now.
It's just like always, so we talk about kind of, Emily mentioned the kind of hesitancy to kind of sometimes invite people into the space. And that's something I've definitely experienced, because I think there are people that would love kind of how, you know, what happens mostly at an ethical society. But I also know that there is not a kind of like, not everyone has the kind of breaks to be able to like stop whatever they're compelled to express, right? Whether it be helpful or not, whether it be ostracizing or not. And I think but I think that kind of, what it kind of gets me like institutionally, when I worry, because when sometimes like even with that, the other side of that was like when young people might come in or a person of color might come in, and then they were like thrust upon responsibility, but the responsibility is not matched with the like influence or capacity to do. You know, it's like, and so it's a you know, when certain young people that might be around or on the stage tell me they've gone into leadership positions, I'm always like, are you okay? You know, like, right? I was like, are you sure? It is not because I don't love this movement or I don't, you know, love the people who are here or not here, but I think it's just can be so draining, and you can feel, you know, speaking of Anya, just like, I didn't even, you know, back then I didn't, like, a few years ago I was like, oh, you know, this kind of push for this young folks taking over the board, this is great for ethical culture. I wasn't worried at the outset about Anya, because Anya, in my mind, knew what she was getting into. But I don't think that quite matters, because, you know, when you think about what do you want to feel from a community that feels like belonging, right? And it's like, also, if you're like the lack of trust, you know, I think I used that word in trusting. It's like if you let me show you that I know what I'm doing, or allow me to do the things that I was entrusted to do. Because what the opposite of that feels like, you know, it takes away so much emotionally, spiritually, right? And I think, and again, I get it, because there's such ownership over that, like, ethical culture is so important to people, and especially people who have the time and capacity to, you know, give a lot of themselves to the movement. But it's also, I think the toxic manifestation of that is a kind of ownership that's constantly exhibited, right, at the cost of who you're going to listen to, who you're not listening to, who you're not allowing to shift or just determine some things, right? And like that, if you don't, you know, it's like, and the thing is like you hold on, it's like a loving, right? You hold on too tight, right? What does that do to something that you love? So. I saw movement. I was like, what? I'm just going over here.
That's really quick. I rankle at the raising of the specter of tokenism, because nobody raises the specter of tokenism about a board full of white guys. And that I think it would be profoundly dismissive to imply that any of the incredible people who are not cishet white guys are tokens in this movement. And the dismissal of the incredible experience and contributions of non-cishet white guys. I mean, such a broad category. They can't even put it under umbrella except not cishet white guys. That it's like, well, what about tokenism? It's like, well, I think people are tired of seeing boards and leadership meetings full of token old white guys.
Yeah, I strongly recommend people check out themanagementcenter.com. I did a great training through them. They have lots of templates online. I did one of the classes available through the Humanist Studies program that the AHA offers is about being a leader of an organization. In this case, like lowercase L, not official ethical culture leader. But I think that it is always important to understand the roles available in an organization, a community, the tasks and responsibilities connected to those roles, the requirements or expectations, the flexibility. So I think that I recommend that our communities really communicate with each other about what it takes to run a successful community, because you're, especially transitioning from one person to another, because none of us are going to survive forever. None of us, even if we have similar abilities and talents, nothing's going to be exactly the same. So I think that when we communicate how people can get involved and find their place, use their talent, and let them have some ownership of how they're going to be seen, ensure that they have whatever resources are needed, be that training, funding, Google folders, meeting time, know that they're not alone in the work they do. Because recently in a meeting when I heard people, for the broader humanist movement, people are like, we just need young people. No, we don't. We need them to find places that they can grow in, that they can feel, that they can be sustainable and welcoming. As Kate Lovelady of St. Louis used to say, almost like in defense of, I think she said when we were at the FEST conference and we're all like, here's FEST and this is why you should support young people. She wrote a whole email to us saying like, let's not exclude the older people, because let's face it, like, there is a lot of talent and ability and time, and there are people coming to the movement in different parts of their journey. It's not just I'm young, I'm unmarried, I want to find community. My partner died, I got divorced, I lost my job, I moved. It's all different transitions that are bringing people into seeking connection. And and I think also, if we focus on the young because we assume that they have more chunks of years in them, but let's also remember how demanding society is, and so so we shouldn't be judging young people for not giving the same money. We had a presentation at WESP recognizing that how the generation wealth has changed over time.
Thank you. Yes, please. There's a microphone right there you can grab.
Just picking up on what you just said, Emily, do you think that there should be a different model of membership to support young people's involvement with that idea in mind so you guys have talked about, that they might have a different availability of time, money, things that are generally seen as the expectations of membership?
Yes, and I'm not quite sure what that is. I do feel like, time, talent, treasure, and training are the important, I'll say it again, time, talent, treasure, training. Some mix of that. I think that, empowering people to be able to make the decisions on how they balance that out. So with the Community Relations Committee, with the 4 of us, 2 of us are a little bit more extrovert than the other 2. And we're much more comfortable speaking in person. And so we had to support the other 2 a little bit more because of also that recognition that it shouldn't be 2 people running the session all the time. So I think that it kind of goes again to that being empathetic, that caring. And also another example of that sort of more teamwork mentality. So at WES, we have experimented a couple different forms of pledge parties. So it's not just like the secretary or the treasurer trying to like get everyone to pay their pledges. There's a party aspect of like, come hang out with other WES members and let's talk about why we love it and let's figure out how much money to give. So I didn't have a space to host the pledge party, but I didn't mind giving the whole spiel about like, let's think about the money aspect. Another member named Mimby had a lovely home. She loves to cook. She has a beautiful garden, but she does not like talking in front of people presentation-wise. So Trang connected us, so we were able to together host a party instead of either of us being responsible for our own ones, and we greatly appreciated that. And there is a skill to even connecting people, and or figuring out. At WES, one of our new member classes is where we give them like the list of all the things West does, and you like interview another potential member to find out about them, and then you make recommendations on maybe what they should consider joining. So it takes a little bit of the decision part away from the person. They're being like invited to participate in things, and also gives a chance for you to make a buddy in your, cohort.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have time for closing comments? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. I would just say that I'm so grateful for every single person on this stage sharing their perspectives. Our diversity strengthens us, diversity in perspective, experience, background, and I think this was a wonderful community building exercise, and I'm just really grateful for all of you for being here today.